Okay, so this one is about the nature of personhood. Now, I was going to touch on this in my last podcast called The Nature of Trust, but I forgot. So I've decided to devote an entire episode to personhood. So I want to view it through the lens of proof of personhood, which is a method of proving to a binary system that you are a human being instead of a bot or an application or an autonomous agent. And so proof of personhood, a common method for this is KYC, otherwise known as Know Your Customer. And that's a way of, autonomously or automating the onboarding of a human being so that the system can trust that is a human being. But it's important the reason I wanted to touch on the differences between proof of legal personhood and proof of natural personhood is because of the implications on legacy preservation of assets and the implications of that on building trustless systems. So proof of legal personhood, that's what KYC is, Know Your Customer. So you're proving that you are the person on your driver's license or on your passport or, on your birth certificate, legal personhood. And what that means is that binds you and bonds you to the legal framework of statute. So this means you can engage in the formal economy, you can have bank accounts, you can get a driver's license, you're registered to pay taxes, but that's not who you are. That's not the human part of you. That's just a made up framework, legal framework that we call statute. And so the nature of legal personhood is that the bonds and the contracts, they bond you to the physical body, the agent. Your physical body is the aspect of your nature that is empowered to act on your behalf. And your will or your voice is the commander, and the body is the willing servant, the willful servant. So those two things are different in law. Now, in the world of law, free will represents your sovereignty. You cannot impinge upon the will of another human being. And that's the will of the human being is the foundation of everything else that is held in place. So the will of the human being is your intent. It is my will to X, Y, Z, A, B, C, so that 1, 2, 3. That is free will. That is your will. And in context of the relationship between your will, which is represented by your voice, and your body, then your will be done. You command your body and it enacts your will. Your voice or the expression of your intent or your will is non-binary because it's represented by a sound or the word, and your word is your bond. It is my will to pick up this coffee cup. My will be done. Your body is powerless to resist the intention for you to pick up the cup. Now, that's not always true. I'm actually not going to go into that technicality yet, because there are exceptions to this. If you become a threat to your own life and to the life of your own body, your body will intervene. So legal personhood, proof of legal personhood, means you're plugged into the formal economy. But proof of natural personhood, so if we're to really have an all-inclusive ecosystem, let's say a digital economy that is all-inclusive and it is entirely trustless, meaning that because it is entirely trustless, it can be wholly trusted by every participant, then it has to accommodate natural personhood. Because there are tens of millions of people, if not hundreds of millions, who don't have bank accounts, who don't have identification, who don't have a birth certificate, who don't have a passport. So proof of legal personhood is not a solution. It's not a solution to an all-inclusive digital or informal economy, or whether it can evolve into the formal economy or not. If we're trying to create solutions that work for everyone, they actually have to work for everyone. You see? And so proof of legal personhood, know your customer, is not an all-inclusive solution. And so the solution is proof of natural personhood. Now, when it comes to proof of natural personhood, your word is your bond, and your will is the commander, and the body or the agent follows, your wish is my command. That's the body's perspective. So it follows commands. Now, in the formal economy, when you create contracts with other people, they're between the physical bodies, or if it's a company, it's between an imaginary entity called XYZ Limited. And it's the same with your name. Your name is just the name of an imaginary, like a company basically, that enables you to bond. And this is why limited liability companies exist, because it's a way to form contracts whereby the people who are involved can avert liability. So, natural personhood means if we're to prove that you're an actual living, breathing human being that is empowered to issue a command, then we need a way to prove that you are who you say you are, that you are the commander. And the only thing about you that is truly, truly unique, that is non-binary, is your voice. It's your voice. And so how can we prove that through your voice you are who you say you are? Now, the problem we have is that if you speak and you've got some kind of voice recognition, that can easily be replicated digitally. Very easily, in fact. So that's not going to work. what is going to work, and the only thing that is going to work is a DNA-based solution, whereby the uniqueness of your DNA coding, which is absolutely unique to you, has a digital representation that is verified and then held and stored on chain. And that is the only way to prove that you are a natural person. And once we can do this, we run the two separate. So you have proof of natural personhood, and then you have proof of legal personhood. Proof of legal personhood enables you to engage in the formal economy, and proof of natural personhood enables you to engage in the informal economy, which sits outside statute law. Very important to understand this, because your word, your will stands above statute, not beneath it. The governments that govern us, the government of New Zealand, for example, is held in place by the will of the people. And that is the will of the people is the only power that holds any agency in place. And very important to understand this. So if we do actually disentangle the will of the human being from the agency, very important to understand that if you create a legal framework that allows the natural person to contract and transact, then that is entirely impervious to statutory legislation. It is entirely impervious to regulation. It sits outside of the formal economy. Sits outside of policing, sits outside of the judicial system, because the judicial system is bonded to the legal person, not the natural person, you see. So it's kind of like unplugging from the matrix, literally. And it's a very vulnerable place because you have no protection. You're totally naked and vulnerable. You have no protection from the government, no protection from the council, from the police. You're totally free and totally vulnerable. And so, I always say to people, be very, very careful with this, because if you are building technology that's seeking to utilize this loophole, it's not actually a loophole, it's just how everything works. Then there's very little protection. And what the dynamics of this mean that your natural personhood and your legal personhood, natural personhood sits under common law. Your word is your bond. And your free will is your sovereignty. And your natural person is the agent that can act on behalf and enact your will. So if you're operating purely in common law, then you have to be very careful, because there are certain things you have to adhere to and abide to that are ignored by statute. Most specifically, a duty of care. Under common law, you have a duty of care to protect the innocent. Meaning, and it doesn't mean to protect a child. It means to protect those who are innocent, who have an innocent perspective. And so, classic example: if you're a founder of a company you've never been a CEO before, you don't really understand how business works, you've got a big pile of money to spend, and you go to a company and ask them to help you build something, and that company exploits your innocence or your naivety, that doesn't fly in common law. And in fact, in common law, if you are shown to have neglected a duty of care, and it causes financial harm or any other form of harm, then you are liable, wholly liable, for restitution. And in that scenario, if you had any assets, personal assets, they would all be fair game in order to bring restitution to someone whose innocence had been exploited, purposefully exploited, or whether a neglect of a duty of care was shown in the business transaction. Very important to understand this. And so this is why I'm a proponent of hybrid agreements, which is really all it is it's a way of contracting that is compliant in common law and in statute law. And I think if seeing where this technology is headed, we want to be able to utilize both. We want to have our sovereignty as the base foundation of everything, and we want to have the option to contract and bond into the formal economy through an expression of intent. And this is where the true power of natural personhood comes in, and that the right of revocation is always in place. This is the beauty of common law and free will, is that your word is your bond. And so if you entered into a contract in the formal economy, a statutory agreement, you're free to revoke, repudiate, extinguish that contract at will and for no reason. Now, especially if it's for self-preservation, if you've come to realize that you entered into the agreement and it's no longer of benefit, then of course you have the right to revoke it immediately. If an emerging truth arises that renders your previous conception obsolete, you have the right of revocation. Now, the ideal scenario is to imbue grace into that situation so that it's not an abrupt ending for everyone involved. However, the right is yours to revoke any and all authority you've ever delegated through a statutory agreement contract, because free will trumps all. And so if you disentangle your will from the agency of your body, the command is the expression of intent from the natural person, and a demand is an expression of intent from the legal person. And those are two very different energies. If you issue a command, it is done. If you issue a demand, it is a firm request that requires the permission of the party you're engaging with. And without it, you are powerless. Very important to understand that. If you ever get a demand letter, they are asking you for permission for something. A firm demand. No matter how intimidating it may feel to receive that demand, without your permission, it is rendered obsolete. It is powerless. And even in a courtroom, although it'd be probably very confusing for the people in the courtroom, even possibly even the judge, especially in New Zealand, because common law and statute law, that they're kind of entangled. We have a district court, and that district court it covers both common law and statute. And so most of the time people inadvertently bond themselves into the statutory judicial system by inadvertently giving their permission. However, there are ways around that. So we have to evolve as a society. We have to understand how the legal system works. We have to understand understand the mechanism that holds it in place. We have to work towards having technology that gives us a dashboard and shows us all of the contracts and bonds that we've made, so that we have the right and a simple way of revoking authority, repudiating agreements, and entering into agreements. And the technology exists to be able to do this, but most of us are bonded to so many agreements, dozens and dozens of agreements, that we just forget how many we have, let alone even consider how we might want to get out of those agreements, or what the obligations are, because it's 12 pages. It's a 12-page documentation, a 12-page document that someone's written to try and avert the consequences of cause and effect. And so ultimately, I see a world within which common law is the de facto standard for governance. Because it's simple. Your word is your bond. Restitution is the standard. Self-governance and reconciling your own disharmony and your own conflict. This is what it means to be a mature adult. Is that you seek to reconcile the disharmony and the impact of your actions on the environment around you. You have to take responsibility for it, whether it's by indemnifying yourself through insurance, or whether it's by agreeing to have joint arbitration before you go into an agreement with someone, rather than just trying to avert the consequences or get out of being liable. It's just ridiculous. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature is always going to reconcile the disharmony. It's always going to find homeostasis. Liability, it's kind of like, it's just cause and effect. This is how nature does it. This is how we need to do it in a legal system. We need to take the emotion out, and we need to look at it and go, how do we bring restitution, which is homeostasis? How do we go back to homeostasis? How do we reconcile the disharmony? That's all that matters. And we're certainly not going to be, in the world I envisage emerging out of this technological revolution that's happening right now, of which, blockchain technology and distributed intelligence systems, serverless blockchains are going to be a component part. Well, the key component part. We have to consider these things now. We have to have the foresight to see what's coming. But I think people really have no clue what's coming. They really have no clue. And I can see the symptoms of it, being that I'm an innovation advisor working with founders in this space. I can see exactly where it's heading and where it's going to go to. And in this scenario where we've got the technology to issue proof of natural personhood and disentangle it from proof of legal personhood, it's going to be a choice whether people want to be protected by regulators. It's going to be a choice whether people want to be protected by statutory legislation. People are going to have a choice. And if they become adept at self-governance and self-regulation, and most importantly, self-responsibility, then, it will self-regulate. And those who want to defer their authority to this, the statutory system, they'll have that option. People that don't, they'll have that option. And we need both, of course. Not everyone has the ability to govern themselves. Everyone is at a different stage on their journey into standing, stepping into their own sovereignty and their own power. It's a really challenging thing to be totally self-responsible. The level of maturity required is immense. And so that's not going to work for children. It's not going to work for adolescents. It's not going to work for adults who haven't had proper education or the right environment within which to self-actualize and increase their self-awareness. So we need both. But we can't allow one to oppress the other. And we have to first bring them both into the light and illuminate how they work. Such as nature, the infinite is the power that gives rise to the binary aspect of reality. All of existence is infinite, but reality is binary. And the binary reality draws its power from the infinite. The infinite is non-binary. There's no beginning and no end. And reality is binary. It has a beginning and an end. But it is something infinite expressing its nature in binary. And so that infinite substance, it's pure sound. If you think of a sound wave, it has no beginning and no end. It's movement. It's pure motion. And if something is truly infinite and non-binary, then it has to have a binary experience in order to create separation so that it can come to know itself. Same with the legal system. Your word is infinite. And your agency, your body, is binary. And the two have to coexist in ternary. There has to be a legal system based on natural personhood, and there has to be a legal system based on legal personhood. And the two working together as one, symbiotically, is where harmony will be found, where homeostasis will be found. And solutions that work for everyone will be available. And this is the essential component of a new version of the formal and the informal economy that enables everyone to take part. Everyone, all-inclusive and trustless. Unity and separation. Centralization and decentralization. Where you can be wholly independent or entirely codependent. Everything has to be available to everyone, and it has to work for everyone, with no one left behind. That's what we should be striving for, and these are the solutions that ternary brings. Okay, I'll leave it there. I think this topic is really important for people to apply their minds to, and the sooner the better. But if you are of the mind that you just want to disrupt and you want to use one of these things to avert the consequences of another, it's going to catch up with you. Technology is moving too fast. You have to bring the other one closer and figure out how to get them to work symbiotically so that we can live in a world that is not as like playing a zero-sum game with some other aspect of reality, where there has to be a winner and a loser. Harmony means that everything is valid. And it doesn't have to be in perfect balance. It just has to be able to find homeostasis. Okay, I'll leave it there. That's it for now. For the Nature of Personhood. Talk soon.